This video is sponsored by Crimson Manifesto, Knuckles OX, and Jopi. We resume as two juvenile Uzaru are beginning to rampage through what had originally been just two seemingly innocent children's play area, with the beast now bearing down on Gohan. However, before they can reach the old martial artist, his aura changes as he prepares to defend his home. Though it seems this is unnecessary, as from behind him, he hears Gine bellow for Bardock to get his ass in gear, rousing her spite-filled and self-hating mate from his weeks-long stupor of brooding, eating, and drinking his sorrows away, having quickly found out Earth had bars and booze just like Planet Vegeta for him to dull his mind in. As such, before the massive monkeys can lay siege to too much of the mountainside, Gohan's other two guests decide to clean up their own mess, albeit with one flying a bit sloppily as they soar towards the monsters. Recognizing what a shell of his former self Bardock has become, Gine doesn't even coordinate with him as she goes for Kakarot, knowing Raditz in this state will be too much for her after earning his way onto an elite squad as a low class. However, Kakarot is still her baby boy, barely old enough to string words together or even understand his own name, and so with his power level having only increased to 20 or so, she is capable of gently play wrestling with him, even distracting him long enough to pin him and give him a raspberry, causing the immature toddler to laugh so hard he forgets his rampaging in favor of a fit of deep boomy giggles, allowing him to quickly be lulled to sleep and revert to his base form from exhaustion after a long day of playing countless competitive little games with his big brother. Meanwhile, the half-hungover Bardock has been left to deal with Raditz. Through the haze of drink, Bardock recollects that in his base form, the boy is only marginally stronger than his mother, at a power level of 580. He was his kid after all, so that's nothing to sneeze at for a juvenile low class, but even if it's been boosted tenfold by the Uzaru transformation, it's still well within Bardock's range of ability. Or, he at least should be. However, in his current state, Bardock is met with far more resistance than he had expected. Sure, it was possible his firstborn got a tiny Zenkai after their little scrap when they first arrived a few weeks back. And sure, the scarred soldier isn't exactly sober or in a fighting state of mind, but even still, there's no chance that runt Raditz is closing the distance between them, right? But it seems this is indeed the case, with Raditz in this feral state appearing to remember what to Bardock was a tiny scrap in more vivid and most importantly resentful detail, with those pent-up frustrations now fueling his crushing grip as he grabs and begins squeezing the life out of his own father. This results in Bardock losing even more strength as he ultimately makes a strange squeaking noise that only eggs his boy on further. Having now moved their unconscious youngest to safety, Gine chooses this moment to return, with her now seeing Bardock in dire straits and being unable to perform his duty, and she begins to panic, knowing she definitely can't. Thankfully, Grandpa Gohan centers her, as he creates a strangely beautiful blue ki blast, and tells her they need to act now if they want to stop the pair of galoots from hurting each other further. This quickly lifts Gine's fighting spirit, as she matches Gohan's blast one of her own, which they then proceed to uselessly bonk against Raditz's head in tandem, distracting him enough to get his lethal focus off of Bardock. Now sobered up courtesy of his fractured ribs, Bardock gets the wherewithal to strain against the big grip of his brat's hands, and sock him across the jaw, causing the massive monkey to stagger back, and unfortunately, damage Grandpa Gohan's house a tad, with Gine and said homeowner soon regrouping with him, now bearing individual irritations. Gohan for the unnecessary damage to his home and lack of transparency from his guests, and Gine for Bardock's irresponsibility, as well as the fact he could have just made Raditz crush poor Kakarot if she hadn't had the foresight to place him in a tree to keep him out of harm's way. Gruffly, Bardock snaps back at her to stop with a nagging, his ears are already ringing, though it is the raised voice of Gohan that actually stops their arguing, as for the first time, the old man is showing some fire, as he tells them to help him put Raditz to sleep now and deal with their spat later. This surprisingly syncs the trio up well, with Gohan taking point and working to trip Raditz up with another of those strange beam attacks, while Gine works to keep the Uzaru's attention and Bardock moves in to squeeze down hard on his tail, eventually sapping him of his strength and knocking him out as well. Now that things have quieted down, Grandpa Gohan obviously wants answers, but Bardock just as obviously doesn't want to give them, acting elusively and attempting to brush Gohan off. However, feeling they owe the man who has taken them in the courtesy of the truth, Gine doesn't let him leave, gently gripping his arm as she begins informing Gohan of their history, their plight, and the origin of what he had already known were strange names. This information also serves to confirm Gohan's suspicions, such as the fact that beneath his ennui, Bardock is a powerful warrior, or more accurately, a soldier with lots of blood on their hands. However, what Bardock once was is of little importance compared to what he is now, which is a subpar father, with the old martial artist insisting that he take more care in looking after his boys. Since while he is of course worried about his own well-being and that of his adult guests, his greatest concern is what horrible fates could befall Kakarot and Raditz if they transform somewhere more populated. Sighing after a long, awkward pause, Bardock offers to help with the repairs of Gohan's house, with Gine also insisting that she'll lend a hand. And so together the trio set to work, with their labor lasting into the morning, so that when Kakarot and Raditz eventually wake up, They are forced to join in if they want breakfast, as Guinea scolds him for being out after curfew, with the brunt falling to Raditz, especially for not paying attention as the older brother, while Bardock mostly just scowls with his arms crossed behind his mate to back her play, having come to actually respect the leadership role she's taken in his, shall we say, absence. When they reach a natural break, Bardock of course wants to return to the local bar at the edge of the nearby city, but before he goes, Grandpa Gohan asks him if he's been giving his, that is to say Gohan's, name out, and using that to start a tab. The scarred Saiyan is at first irritated because he thinks of this as more nagging, now expecting a lecture, though when he gruffly confirms this, Gohan instead praises the act as a prudent one, since if Saiyan names are such a strong cultural identifier, and they want to keep a low profile, they need to keep their true names hidden when outside of trusted circles. At these words, Bardock is again hit with a strange sensation, as this seemingly genuine concern abates his thirst for now, with him actually sticking around long enough for Gohan to think up some aliases for the family. Wanting to honor his old mentor, he decides to base these off his Jackie Chun persona, figuring Master Roshi wouldn't mind. As a result, Bardock becomes Bruce Chun, the son of Jackie. Guinea becomes Lee Chun, with the cover story of being Gohan's daughter, and as they have already taken to calling Gohan their grandpa, Kakarot is given the nickname Son Goku, while Raditz shall be referred to as Son Gojo. He even suggests that since they caused so much trouble, it might be worth getting rid of their tails to better blend in with humanity. Though from the looks he gets in response, he quickly recognizes the faux pas he has made, and so rescinds the statement to relax everyone. Now with the issue of fake names sorted, Bardock, or rather Bruce, leaves for the bar once again, while Grandpa decides to do his morning exercises, leaving an opportunity for Guinea to handle the cooking of the half-destroyed kitchen for the day, and try her hand at some Earth recipes. As a result, she soon finds herself zooming around the mountain, gathering all kinds of big game for ingredients, even offering the boys to race her if they want. However, Raditz decides to pass on this, with the impressionable Kakarot mimicking him, as Guinea laughs and leaves them to watch Grandpa as he practices whatever that strange dancing is, a bit hypnotized by it herself. Nonetheless, when she returns a few hours later, Guinea finds Gohan in a state of excitement, while both her boys are already aping the motions and forms he'd been doing that morning with commendable efficiency. When applied at full speed and energetically, she can now recognize this as some strange yet somehow captivating style of fighting. As while Raditz is still much older and stronger than his younger brother, this dancing, so to speak, is allowing Kakarot to level the playing field somewhat, with Grandpa Gohan dutifully stepping in to both calm the two youngsters before they can do anything too rowdy, especially after the events of last night, as well as to make a few small corrections to their form. Though she is now curious about what she hears referred to as martial arts, Guinea decides to let the boys enjoy their time with their adopted grandpa. It being very clear the once lonely old man is now finally getting to truly enjoy having guests, since this is the first she's seen of this great strength of his. Watching from afar while preparing a big lunch, Guinea quickly finds herself picking up a lot of what the boys are, and perhaps even a little more due to being both an adult and someone who has seen real battle, albeit briefly. By the time they sit down to eat, Bardock comes flying back woozily, the reek of alcohol, and now acrid tobacco preceding him like an unwelcome companion. This at last prompts Guinea with the backing of Grandpa Gohan to inform the scarred Saiyan that he'll need to get a job if all he plans to do is spend his days drinking up the old man's meager funds. Having at least some semblance of Saiyan pride, in so much as he prefers to earn what he has rather than be given it, Bardock huffily agrees, with the makeshift family sharing a meal. Competitive as ever, Raditz and Kakarot race to clean their plates and return to their martial arts practice, with Kakarot claiming victory as he gloats through a mouthful of meat and rice. However, karma is just, swift, and occasionally round, as when Kakarot goes to dash out of the damaged house, he instead trips on a small sphere that rolls out from Grandpa Gohan's room, due to its exposed wall and the commotion of the last day or so. The sight of this shiny object catches everyone's eye, with Gohan rushing up to check on Kakarot and retrieve the orb while quickly quieting the smaller Saiyan sniffles, as he explains the story behind the wish-granting orbs and the dragon they summoned to distract him, quickly dispersing the welling tears in his eyes with wonder. Though Gohan can't say whether it's true or not, having only heard it secondhand from his master, the idea of any wish their heart desires being granted captures the minds and imaginations of all who come across it, including the Saiyans, with Bardock of course musing over wishes for vengeance or power, while Guinea considers blessings of protection and life for a growing family. Even Raditz salivates at both gluttonous and Weasley ideas, like being more powerful than his dad, or else a lifetime supply of those little red tear-shaped berries. While Kakarot, or Goku as he also answers to, alone has no wish, being pretty content with his life due to having great food, shelter, and playmates in the form of his brother, mother, and grandpa. Though, if he can make his dad a bit more gentle like Grandpa, that'd be kinda cool. That night, Bardock's attempts to drown out his dreams are not as effective as they had been during the trip to Earth and each night since discovering its liquor, with the visions of carnage befalling the random Ceruleans he tried to spare now evolving in complexity and level of disturbingness, with this nightmare even involving the berserk one of the Heaters, who like the Ceruleans eventually morphs into a family member, Raditz, as he beats him savagely, in a reverse of their fight from when they first arrived on this world. Waking from this ever-recurring nightmare, Bardock thinks of seeking comfort in Guinea's arms, but ultimately decides against it, as truthfully, he doesn't feel worthy of it or of her. To this end, he winds up stepping outside the small damaged house, averting his gaze from the waxing moon on instinct as he realizes he has joined his host, and so ends up sitting with Grandpa Gohan in the cool breeze. The old man chuckling his home has never been so warm without a fire. Unsure if it is the remaining booze in his system or his waning fighting spirit compelling him, Bardock decides to open up about his nightmares and the guilt no amount of sake and beer has been able to drown. Being a wise old hermit in his own right, Gohan suggests that if running has not served him, perhaps Bardock would do well to face his mistakes and work to gain the forgiveness he craves. Puzzled, Bardock asks how he's supposed to do that, with Gohan stating that forgiveness is twofold. The first step is that he must forgive himself, and while it is much easier said than done, it can be done. Recounting the story of a man he once knew who had eyes just like Bardock's, hardened by a war with the Demon King, but who learned with time to let go of his regret and instead used his battle-scarred hands to pass on tools for peace. Unsure if he can ever truly forgive himself for his cowardice, the Saiyan asks what the second step is, to which Gohan answers forgiveness from those who he has wronged, before bestowing the 4-star Dragon Ball upon him. Unable to speak, Bardock simply raises his eyebrows, wordlessly asking if the old man is saying the wish orbs can really do what he's thinking, though instead of giving an answer, the old martial artist simply tasks him with collecting all 7, since if the legend is true, this might be the only way to put a stop to those troubling dreams. For a moment, Bardock hesitates, trying to cite his duties here to protect his family, but in a surprisingly blunt tone. Gohan points out that he has utterly neglected those duties so far in favor of protracted self-destruction, so if he is genuine about wanting to right his wrongs, he has no reason not to go. Sighing deeply, Bardock concedes this, asking where should he begin, as he has no leads and no way to find these little things, stating grimly that he doesn't want to use the Frieza Force methodology of simply slaughtering everyone till he finds what he needs. Gohan is naturally horrified by this, but seeing that Bardock truly does want to change, he advises him to seek out the man from his story, his master, Muten Roshi, before giving him directions to the Turtle Hermit's island, as he believes the old man has one in his possession, and even if he doesn't, he thinks it'd be good for the two of them to meet. Nodding his understanding, Bardock under the guise of Bruce Chun departs, leaving behind a parting message for Gine and the boys of Grandpa Gohan, as he sets off into the rising sun. His destination, unknown, but his purpose, clear for the first time in a long time. To embark on a mystical adventure and collect the 7 Dragon Balls, so that he may revive the woman who keeps appearing in his dreams. But that is where we'll be leaving this story off for right now. Boom, that's Bardock's Family Escape Part 2. I'm really loving this story so far. I'm really enjoying this. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, even though, like I said, it's going to have some kind of, mature themes to it. This is such a genuinely, intriguing story that I really do enjoy this. Now, last time I did say to, continue this as a mainline series really quickly on the channel, I wanted 3K likes. It hasn't even been a full month yet since Part 1 went out, but it's only gotten to about 1.7K likes, so my hope is that I can put a few of these out as patron and member exclusives, and then the likes will start to trickle in the way they kind of have for Pigaro, because Pigaro is also going to be getting to where I can probably get it a little more streamlined and ready to go to where this will kind of replace it as a patron exclusive. That just needs to happen. And then Pigaro parts will start trickling out, more consistently, the way I've been saying they will. That out of the way, make sure you go ahead and leave a like and subscribe and comment, even if you are watching this later on. That stuff does a massive thing to help in the algorithm make videos perform better than they usually would if you don't do that stuff. Plus, as you see, I've got a lot of custom art and stuff going around. Once again, shout out to Valerius Vi, who provided the arts for the Earth Disguise Saiyans. And before we get to the shoutouts for patrons and stuff, I got a few questions for you. Leave me with some of your thoughts. What do you think of the nicknames for everyone and the little names they're going to get? What do you think of Bardock's adventure? Who do you think Bardock will meet on this adventure? Things like that. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Now, for our amazing supporters of the channel, Knuckles OX, Crimson Manifesto, Pizza 15X, Aaron Winters, Normandy 1998, Shao Pai, Coder SV3, Ronin Charizard, Daniel Smith, Dylan Wolfdog 31, Infernate Beast 326, Jay Ray, Johnny, Narku, Omar Cousin, Snow Slash Memes and more, Stephen Norton, Taryn, The Shadows, Vegeta What Ifs, Alamancer, B, Blood Down, Lyman Rogers, Omar Muhammad, Aiko, Tay, Inebriated, John Sullivan, Trent Rouse, Dark Shadows, Pokemon Trainer Cam, River Joy, Elijah Edwards, Mr. Hamtastic, Jesus is King, Half an Onion, Angel Gonzalez, David Spalding, Lil T 910, Blaze 9526, Trainer Rad 164, Luca Reynolds, Baron Stormblade, Ono, Chris Macriano, Lily, Simroth, Red Violet, DeAndre, Gerald Smith, John Self, Jacob Whitaker, Massive Oak Wood Tree, Demon Set, True Trey, Dutch McGee 101, Bruce Boswick, Robert Arstegard, Illis Cyclops, Craig Scheiman, Jao Matten, King Music for Real, Ballcore, Zach Eubanks, Crab Trooper 4552, NBA Fan, Courtney Hawkins, Orion 101, Christian Kyler, Dominic Wiltz, Jester DeMille, Cyber Samurai, The Grim Doctor, The Storybuster, One Cold Pirate, Ganning 667, Dr. Ember, Chris, and Kieran Lightfoot. Thank you guys as always for directly supporting the channel, helping me get my content out and making it very high high quality, and if you'd like to join their ranks and get perks like early access to normal videos as well as some support exclusive stuff, then please consider joining the ranks. With that out of the way though, be sure to take care of yourselves and the world around you, and as always, go beyond plus ultra, and I'll see you guys next time.